All right, for this section in part 3, 11.1, valuing radical expressions. So this part again is also pretty straightforward. It's just substituting numbers into an expression and solving. We're going to be using this form as the square root of b squared minus 4ac. This is going to come into play later when we are dealing with quadratic equations. So I'm just introducing it now so you can get a look at it, and so that it's something familiar when we do later in the year. So basically, I'm going to give you a value for A, B, and C. You're going to plug it into this, do your order of operations within to get a number, and then from here, if it's a perfect square, good, you get your answer. If not, we're going to break it down like we did before. Remember, when we are substituting numbers in, I want you to use parentheses around each number, especially when we're dealing with a number that is squared. So in this case, b is -2. So we put -2 in parentheses so that it comes out as a +4 when we go through our math using our calculators, whatever you need to do. So essentially, once you get this part, you can plug that whole thing into your calculator, so that you can just hit enter, and then you have the total of underneath the radical. So let's go ahead and do these sample problems. So we are going to look at this, and we are going to substitute the numbers within. So our b here is 3. I'm just going to stay consistent and keep them in parentheses. So we have 3 squared minus 4 times a, which would be 2, and then times c, which would be -5. So again, if you have this incorrectly, one way we can do it, excuse me, is to make sure that we have it all in parentheses like that. So then I'm going to go to, a calculator. All right, I am going to bring up my calculator, and then what I could do is just type in inside the radical. Now, I could type the whole thing underneath the radical using the parentheses, but that might just give us a decimal, and we're going to simplify it later. So I'm just going to focus on this part right here. So I'm going to type that in. So I'm going to put my parentheses, and then 3 parentheses. There's my squared button, minus 4, parentheses 2, parentheses -5. And you can see that it gives us 49 right there. So we have the square root of 49. So from here, you might want to check to see if it is a perfect square. So I could put in, I'm going to clear this. So the square root of 49 comes out as 7. So your final answer is 7. Oops, sorry about all this stuff coming up on my computer. So that would be the answer for that problem with using a calculator to help you out. So on the next one, we want to make sure we have our b squared minus 4ac as well. So as I go through this, I'm going to do the square root. I'm going to put my things in parentheses. So in this case, b is 8. And c 8 squared minus 4 times -1 times 20. So I get those right there set up, and then you can go ahead and go do the same thing within your calculator. So I brought up my calculator here. I'm going to type this in. I'm going to type in inside here, again, just in case it's not a perfect square, because then you might have to do some problems later to make sure and how to break it down. So I'm going to type in my 8 squared, so in parentheses 8 squared, minus 4 times -1 times 20. And it gives us 144. So this would be the square root of 144. So before I break that down like I did in the previous section, let's check and see if it is a perfect square. So I can do the square root of 144. That comes out as 12. So 12 would be my answer. Again, if these don't come out as perfect squares, we're going to have to do the factor tree and simplify that radical. All right, here's an example of one that will not come out as a perfect square, so go ahead and write this down and give it a shot. So we are going to use the b squared minus 4ac again, the square root of that. And we are going to use for a equals 3, b equals negative 2, c equals negative 10. So we're going to write that out. Square root of b squared, which would be in parentheses, negative 2 squared minus 4, parentheses 3, parentheses negative 10. Alright, so we're going to type that into our trusty calculator and see what we get. So I'm going to use, parentheses, the b, which would be negative 2 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 10. And that gives us a 124. So the square root of 124. So now I'm going to see if this is a perfect square. So let's clear this out. Square root of 124. Hit enter and it's not. It's 11 point a bunch of stuff. So we're going to go ahead through and simplify that like we did in the previous section. So I'm going to break down 124. Let's bring out the basic calculator so we can get our prime factorization down. So 124 divided by 2 is an even number. So we have 2 and 62. I'm going to break down 62, so we'll divide that by 2 as well. So 2 and 31. 31 is a prime number, so we are good there. You can see I have a pair of 2's that will come out. So this problem will be a 2 on the outside, and the prime number that's left over is a 31. So your final answer for this one would be 2 root 31.